Hello, everybody. Welcome to M Pulse. This is episode number 12. 12. We're calling this the transition episode. We have listened. We have done 11 episodes of this show, and we have found a topic that resonates with you guys. We have found a topic that is universal. Well, universal on this planet. We found a topic that actually you want to listen to, and that is about developers. I would do my big developer dance, but I don't think that would do us any good. The focus of what we're going to be doing from this point forward is on the development community. We're going to be talking about how the developers can leverage other resources, aka people, who have the expertise to be able to help you, help all of us, understand what it means to be a developer in the mobile community. And, you know, we've got a great show today. We're kicking it off with user experience and the user interface, and we've got a great guest from Microsoft for this, but really appreciate all the feedback we've received. We are transitioning into a developer focused video podcast. The only thing that hasn't changed really are your hosts. Really, we have not changed anything. We are going to bring the same expertise, but we're going to have a developer focus and an app focus around the things that we are doing. So with me, as always, from Germany, well, Miss Peggy Ann Saltz. Peggy, welcome.
Hey, Rob. Great to be with you as usual. And 12, yes, and it's the transition episode. Also, a little bit of news over at my end. I've done a little bit of transitioning. I have a new look website at Mobile Groove. And what I'm really pleased about is the way that it collects voices in a community of contributors, and I'm still open. I'm still considering other contributors to add for different topics. Mobile health, for example, would be great if anyone's out there who wants to connect with me. So yes, good all around. And the developer focus, very timely, not only because people gave us feedback and said they wanted to hear about it, but also because everything is going in that direction. It's not just the events and others, but I just saw today developer newsletter, completely redone, revamped to be ready for this new audience. So here we are, and we'll take it from here.
Well, I couldn't agree more with you. I just was actually bringing up your website as we were talking there because I think it's very pertinent. You know, I love that. I'll bring it up right now here at the very bottom. I think right there, down there at the bottom. If you're very interested, look at that. For those of you who aren't watching, those are our episodes at the bottom of our page. We're very excited about that.
Yeah, I'll take a little bit of a walk through it because someone has actually suggested to me that we connect at some point to do a video walkthrough of the website, because at the top we have my thought leadership partners, Millennial Media and Optism. So these are briefing rooms, sites where you can go in and get reports, thought leadership, posts I've written, guest posts from other people about topics around mobile advertising in the case of Millennial Media, permission marketing in the case of Optism. In addition, great contributors, including Jeff Hassan, who's been writing about mobile marketing forever, and now that he has his new book, he'll be writing some excerpts there. Charles Knight coming back, our veteran mobile search watcher, and it's just going to be great. Of course, always my companion post to you, Rob, and our episodes at the bottom, very good. Also, they'll be coming along, showing a rotation of all our best episodes.
That's a ton of stuff. So I would encourage everybody to go to mobilegroove.com. Please. It's for your own good. Not for us. It's for your own good. Well, this was quite the week. You know, we have decided to transition into a developer-focused area, so we've got a list of basically 38 different steps in development when you're talking about apps, from user experience, which we're going to talk today, all the way down to marketing at the other end and monetizing what it is that you're developing. And I'm really excited about getting to the interview today because, you know, quite literally, we sat down with Arturo Toledo, who is a senior user experience designer in the Windows Phone Design Studio for Microsoft. He's based out of Redmond. He's the guys that are working on the Metro interface across all platforms, but specifically in the mobile space, in the Windows Phone space. Very excited. Great session we had with him earlier on. We will be posting that. We will go to that interview right after we are finished with our little blurb here, which is also going to be app focused. And I think we should dive into that, don't you?
Absolutely. I mean, you kick off, Rob. It's the news. We'll be hearing about it all week. And interesting enough, we're in sync in an interesting way, but you kick off with the big news and what your take is.
Why don't we do that? I'm going to jump right into it. Throwing it up on the screen. Instagram bought by Facebook for a reported $1 billion. Gotta let that sink in for a little bit, because $1 billion, Peggy, that's an insane amount of money. That's an incredible amount of money. This is what they're calling, obviously, the largest mobile app purchase in the history of mobile apps. I don't think that anybody would have considered this. This is coming from a company that was valued, that raised about 4 days ago, $50 million at a $500 million valuation. So in 4 days, the valuation doubled to $1 billion from that round that they just raised. If you don't know who Instagram is, just turn this computer off, shut it down. Don't bother watching the rest of the show. Instagram is a photo sharing application. The unique value proposition is that it has a bunch of filters that make your crappy photos look great. And they do for me, and I love this service. I use it quite consistently. Every day I use it. Every day I find a way to use it. It's found that stickiness factor. It's got 30 million users in 2 years. The company's been around for about 550 days. Kevin Systrom is the founder. Oddly enough, he got some angel investment at the very beginning of this 2 years ago. That angel investor abandoned him and went with a different company. Can you believe it? How are they feeling right now as Facebook has bought this? So a few things on this. One of them is that this is an app. You know, there was a lot of criticism around Facebook's mobile strategy, and they needed to do something pretty aggressively, and Instagram is that buy. It really does complement them very, very, very well. I look at this as a huge loss for Twitter. I look at this as a huge loss for Google+. They screwed up. They had an opportunity here to own that photos. And I think that Instagram fits very, very, very well with a Twitter. Very well. A lot of the traffic that you're seeing right now on Twitter is photos, and it is Instagram photos. It would have been a perfect marriage, and it would have been able to allow Twitter to really battle the behemoth in Facebook. So Facebook bought this company. They're going to leave it alone, in theory, and as a standalone company, and not, people are worried about destroying it, but they're not going to do that. They're not going to leave it alone. At some point, you spend $1 billion on something, you want some value out of it. So we don't know what that's going to be, but my feeling is that this was very much a partial move into mobile to satisfy the investors that are about to invest in the company in their IPO. But it's also, so maybe that's $500 million. The other $500 million was a protection against Twitter or Google actually acquiring Instagram. And we think that that's what happened here. There was a bidding war, a secret bidding war that happened because it took everybody by storm when it was announced on Easter Monday. But now this is really a defensive posture. And I think that Twitter is going to be reeling from this. The second company behind this is a company called Path, which comes from, the founders of Path come from Facebook. And they've created a beautiful app that's a private application that's much more suited to Facebook than an Instagram. Now, there's speculation that that company will go for $1 billion or somewhere around that realm to either Google or Twitter, whoever can afford that. These are insane valuations, but boy, did Facebook ever make a splash into the mobile space. And I believe that the impact of this is going to be that their stock price is going to go up, and this $1 billion will be a wash as a result of an increased demand for their stock price coming. But Peggy, $1 billion? My goodness, where are we? 1999?
Yeah, I was going to just bring that up, Rob. I mean, you're following more the sort of the VC and the money side of the app industry out there. I mean, doesn't this smack a little bit of what we've already been through? I mean, you're talking about valuations that yes, very interesting, but are they sustainable? Are we heading to that .com, meltdown again?
I would hope not.
What are your thoughts?
But I think that what we are seeing is irrational right now. But you know what? The thing to keep in mind here is valuations. People have said this, and I'm on the fence. They said, listen, Facebook has just put 1% of its total valuation into this acquisition, so $1 billion. So they're worth $100 billion. Facebook is. That's a company that's generated $3.5 billion in revenue is worth $100 billion. So people are saying that, it's only 1% of their current valuation, but I think that their current valuation is out of whack, right? For a company that's driving $3.5 billion in revenue, there's no way that it deserves a $100 billion valuation. So yeah, I think that we are in jeopardy here of overvaluing. And it's amazing what's happened to justify this buy at this price when you have accepted that Facebook is worth $100 billion right now, I have a hard time accepting this. And good for Kevin Systrom and his team, a 13-person team, $1 billion buy. These guys had the smarts to say yes because unlike Groupon, who didn't say yes to a $6 billion acquisition offer from Google, they will rue that day. They will go bankrupt penniless, and at least Systrom will have some money in his pocket, somewhere up the realm of $400 million. And that will just spread. That will spread entrepreneurship and investment on his part, I hope. But Bubble, man, I can't help but think. I wrote an article about this just yesterday around this acquisition, and I think that what Netscape did to the web world when they went IPO in 1997, it was the beginning of that bubble. I think that what we've just seen, basically it's like a nuclear bomb just hit the mobile world, and it was Instagram, and it will be the day that we look back on and say, hey, when did this start? Started yesterday, started Easter Monday.
Well, to stay with the numbers with you
Please.
there. Yeah, well, that by accident, we're in sync again, Rob, which is always excellent. I was reading through and looking at the reaction and picked up on Tommy Ahonen, my dear friend and esteemed colleague, because his takes on these are always worthwhile. And once again, he doesn't disappoint. If you go over to Communities Dominate Brands, you'll see that he, the math man, right, has done the numbers, and he's saying, okay, keep in mind that we're talking about mobile social networks and communities. But he puts this again in perspective with, I think, is a great post. Yes, there are some missing, perhaps, and there are some comments, the post already saying, hey, if you're going to count Nimbuzz as a community, then you have to think of eBuddy. And so I'm sure people will be adding to the list. It's a worthwhile list, great to take a look at. Largest social networks on mobile as of end 2011, and we have the numbers: Facebook Mobile, and then ones we don't know about, Sina, RenRen, iMessenger, MiG33, BlackBerry Messenger. There you go, Rob, coming in there, I think, at number 7. So it gives you perspective that I think is important, and that's what I always value from Tommy. And of course, if you want to read sort of like the uncut version at the end of the post, we also see that Tommy has come up again, and I'll have to download it because I have the whole set. It's almost like the box set. You have to have it. We have Pearls Volume 2, Mobile Social Networking from Tommy Ahonen, only €9.99. And, of course, I can imagine a great download because if there's anybody who knows the mobile industry by numbers, it's Tommy. So what can you say to that?
He does. I had the great privilege of sitting down with Tommy when he was in Toronto a couple of years ago is when I met him. And what he talked about, I'm pulling up, is mobile is the $5 trillion gorilla that is starting to absorb industries. And I was so inspired by this guy. He's just, you talk about enthusiasm about this industry, it is him. He oozes enthusiasm about this industry. Mm-hmm. But back to his list, I am, it's not surprising to me. We in the media in North America, and I just can't believe I classify myself as media, but we've talked about the impact that this Instagram buy is. They talked about it as the 3rd largest social network on the planet. And according to Tommy's list here, I mean, it's not even in the top 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13th, behind something called Gree. I know Nimbuzz, Mixit, BlackBerry Messenger, obviously, and I'll pull it up just in a smaller format. And you've got Mobile IQ and Facebook, obviously, but they just bought the 30 million users of Instagram. So, this is an eye opener. We can't be, and even Apple's iMessenger is 58 million people. Mm-hmm. We can't. We're too focused on what's going on in our community in North America. We should be focused on the world right now, and we don't do that very well, do we?
No, we don't. And if you think about your point, I mean, just as an aside, if we think about Instagram as being the beginning of something bigger, a larger trend, you might say this is the shopping list for acquisitions to watch in the next period of time, because there it lays it out. You want to buy Nimbuzz or Gree? I mean, here you have the numbers. Just a thought. You never know. The mobile industry is a strange place, bro.
But if I was anybody, how quickly, how soon is that next app going to be bought? There had to have been a bidding war here with Instagram. You're absolutely right. Somebody is looking at this kind of stuff saying, where do we go now? We just lost Instagram. Something's coming. So
yeah.
I don't know, but this is the craze that's about to happen. And you know what's going to happen next? The next trend that we're seeing is the social discovery applications. We've talked about it all the time here. Highlight, Glancy, Banjo.
Yes.
Those companies are next on the list. I swear they're going to have the next billion-dollar valuation. And are they warranted or not? Who knows? But I say this. If you're an entrepreneur, get in the game right now. Sell your company right now or in the next couple of years, because it's going to, don't hold on too long. Take the billion. Man. So those are the two stories, all meshed up into one. What do you think about that? Do you think that this is the beginning of the bubble? This is the beginning of the end of mobile as we know it. This happened in the web world, but what happened post bubble is the web came to life. It came, commerce was initiated. Amazon became profitable post bubble, post implosion. Are we going to start to see that in the mobile space? I hope not. I'm not ready for it yet. I like this. I like the innovation that's coming out of this. So that's it. Instagram, finally succumbing to purchase requests from Facebook, as well as Tomio Honen's top list of mobile social networks. Go and take a look at both of those things, and we'd love your feedback. Please, 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 please. Please, I say, please. All right, Peggy, what should we jump into right now? I think that it's time for our interview.
Absolutely.
So to bring you...
which is fantastic.
It is. And Arturo was great. We love sitting down and talking with him, but we will let him do the talking from this point forward. So enjoy our session with Arturo Toledo, who is the Senior User Experience Designer in the Windows Phone Design Studio for Microsoft. Here is Arturo. So how important is UI and UX? Well, some say this is the fundamental challenge of any application development, more so in this little world we call mobile, because of the screen size, because of fat fingers, anything you want to think about. UI, UX is probably the most important thing. I believe it. I know our guest believes it. I know Peggy believes it. You guys out there, developers who are going through this, should believe it as well. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. We have a great guest, Arturo Toledo, who is the Senior User Experience Designer for the Windows Phone Design Studio at Microsoft in Redmond. Welcome, Arturo. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much, Rob, and hello, Peggy. Thank you for the invitation to spend some time talking and having a conversation together.
Thank you.
All right, so we are back to rooting for Microsoft. It has been a wild ride over the last 2.5 years when Microsoft announced that they were going to abolish the Windows Phone, not abolish it, but stop development on that chain, on that branch, on that line, and go over here and start something from the ground up. And we now know that everything that we're talking about from the ground up is really about a UI UX change experience. I think they got to the end of the rope as far as they could with their current design and had to start over again. Is that an appropriate way to look at this, Arturo?
Yeah, definitely. A couple years ago, a little bit more now, Microsoft was heading to a particular direction with Windows Mobile 6.5 back then, and some of you, I'm sure, have seen Windows Mobile. It was probably one of the few smartphone options for many years, and then iPhone came out, and it did reset expectations for what a smartphone and what a phone should be offering. And so, obviously, in Microsoft, we were like, well, this direction that we've been having these years, it has given us a lot. It has enabled us to empower the enterprise with a great phone, but now we want to help consumers with a much better experience. And so, yeah, the decision was to basically put that away and start from scratch. And this time, one of the amazing things that happened, I believe, is that our executives believe in a user experience team, and they empower this user experience team as well as our engineering team, because let's be clear, this is about design, but it's always a super strong partnership with engineering, and that's really the only way to make things happen in partnership. But this user experience team and studio was assembled and put together and empowered to really build a product from scratch. And I think that's what really has made a huge difference in terms of the quality for the product.
As I said, it was a very controversial decision back when this was made, when Windows Phone, Windows Mobile was essentially put on the back burner, and Metro was announced, or not at that time, but and since then the world has changed in mobile so dramatically. I don't know even that Microsoft saw this coming. What has happened over the last two plus years. And now we find ourselves back where Metro is square in the focus again, and building up a grassroots following and growing as the underdog for the first time. Microsoft is the underdog, and not only that, you've got a whole bunch of people rooting for Microsoft because it is a beautiful design and it has been thought through, and it is an effective way to use it not only on the device, your mobile device, your tablet, or your desktop. Really, how important is UI to what you guys have produced?
It's definitely fundamental. The experience of the product is everything, and it's not only something that Microsoft is bringing to the industry. The whole tech industry has moved, slowly but surely towards being driven by experience. Now, the interesting thing about Windows Phone is that when it was created, when it was first designed, the team came up with this concept called the Metro design language. It's a design paradigm inspired in different design principles from back in the 1950s, the international typographic style, also called or known as the Swiss style. These are universal principles, and this design style is really what has made a huge difference and a huge impact not only in phone, but it turned out that it was so successful that other teams in Microsoft started embracing this design language as well. And so we saw last fall the Xbox team releasing the amazing job that they did with the new dashboard inspired in the Metro design principles. And then the Windows team is has also exposed some of the amazing work that they're doing across a number of different form factors, leveraging also the Metro design principles. So yeah, Metro, which is a user experience and design paradigm, has really been fundamental, to kind of reignite the passion around Microsoft design, for sure.
Well, speaking about that passion, Arturo, and I see it in this design, in this approach, but at the end of the day, what we're really saying is the design is core. Start with design. Think about design first, even before you start coding, as Rob said. Keeping that in mind, you're walking the talk, you're doing it over there. Could we start off with first your view of how valuable design is, and built on top of that, what is then the approach developers need to be taking to this? Maybe what they need to be doing is all partnering with designers, getting like a chief design officer to partner with before they even start.
No, absolutely. So the studio has these couple slides that we share with people every time that we can, basically highlighting the importance of following a design process for the creation of any digital or any other product, for that matter, that we might want to create. And following a design process means bringing a lot of traditional design, the design approach, like sketching and defining the concept. So giving yourself and your team the time and the opportunity to explore what you want to build before you build it. Now, that might sound like something obvious and logical, right? Like, I should not just start coding. But the truth is that we find a lot of designers jumping directly into Photoshop. And this has been a traditional thing, right? We designers, we tend to be attracted towards Photoshop, and we go there and we start designing. We don't necessarily yet know or understand the information architecture for our application, the objective of the application, but we already start designing the user interface. Same thing for developers. The natural instinct, because we love to code, is to jump into Visual Studio and start coding out an application. But again, we don't yet know the objectives, the goals, et cetera, et cetera. And so following a design process means allowing yourself, whether this is independently of whether you're a developer or a designer, allow yourself and your team to brainstorm, to sketch, to define the concept for what you're looking for. And obviously, with this statement, I think I'm referring more to what we know as breadth developers, or developers who are smaller shops. because obviously larger startups, they understand that it is fundamental to completely understand and design your product before you build it. It's way cheaper. It's much cheaper to throw away a quick paper prototype that took you 2 hours to put together and get some feedback than throw away 2 months of work, because then you realize that you took not the best decision when it came to a user interaction. And the other thing, Peggy, that we were talking about the other day is that when it comes to startups, I read this article, which, by the way, I didn't find, but I'm sure someone who's watching this video might have read the article. But it talked about the importance of startups in Silicon Valley or anywhere else to integrate and incorporate user experience or designer-driven person as part of their founding group, as part of the board. That is starting to make it much easier for both angel investors as well as more formal VCs to invest in your company when they realize that you are not all about engineering and not all about the coding, but that you can actually deliver an end-to-end product that will satisfy the users and the customers. And I think VCs clearly understand that experience is the product. And so, to your point, bringing the design process is important, and having someone as part of the founders of a startup to be there is also fundamental. We see that externally, but also here in Microsoft. Today in Microsoft, if you make a pitch for a project and you don't have a strong design and experience value proposition as part of the proposal, it won't go through internally. Like internally, a lot of things have changed, and people are really looking at how this can impact the experience for consumers.
That's a fundamental shift, isn't it, Arturo? Because we heard a lot over the last 10 years, or the last 15 years in Silicon Valley, that if you wanted to go get funding, you wanted to build something out, go find a technical co-founder first, which is an engineering based. If you're a business guy, go find a technical co-founder who can build it for you. But now what we're finding is that the subtlety of UI and the user experience requires something even richer. So instead of a two-person founding team, you need that third person, which is somebody who understands how people are going to interact with this, to be able to do the prototyping before you lay a line of code. That's a fundamental shift, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think it has a lot to do with communicating the vision. There are great entrepreneurs with no technical background and no design, obviously, that have been successful. And even without being designers per se, they've been successful because of one particular ability that we would like to think that all designers have, which is the ability or the skill of storytelling. It's all about storytelling. And so when you have a designer in your team who can sketch, who can put together comps or mock-ups and put together perhaps even an After Effects video that shows the vision of where you're heading to with the product, then you help your investors and any other person, even consumers, visualize what their future is with the product. So naturally, entrepreneurs and technical people are more focused on other aspects, on the business, on the marketing, on the execution from an engineering point of view. And that's where a designer, I think, brings a lot of value by complement the team with the ability to do storytelling. Mm-hmm.
When we talk about vision, I'd like to come to another area of that, which is the way apps are evolving. And, we're seeing them, yes, they're on our smartphones, they're on our tablet devices, they're going to be in our TVs, they're going to be everywhere, cars, the works. We've been talking about that a lot in this series. But that also has certain requirements for UI and UX that we can't even begin to fathom at this point because we're just starting off. So with that in mind and keeping in mind this handoff that has to happen and what goes into that in UX and UI, what can you say? Can you give me any tips or do's or don'ts as we approach this era of fluid experience?
Yeah, I love the way you're portraying that, Peggy, because it really is not anymore about just screens, right? It's not anymore about applications. It's about this fluidity of the experience of the user, which will manifest in multiple screens and multiple form factors. But 6-7 years ago already, it's a while, it's amazing, but that I joined Microsoft, I used to have my own small design studio, and when a client asked me to build a website, it was very simple for me because a website was a website, period. It was a one-dimensional project where my test matrix was Internet Explorer 6, perhaps 7 towards the end. And that was it, right? But to your point, today, things have changed a lot. Not only we have at least four, competitive browsers out there in the market, we have all sorts of different form factors from the phones, and then different browsers in the phones, tablets, and then different browsers in the tablets, and then desktops. And then we also have the layer of web and native applications native applications. So the test matrix for someone to have digital presence today, if a large client like Land Rover or Starbucks or a small, my local pizzeria shop, they come and tell me, I want to have digital presence. My answer is not as simple as it was in the past, like, oh, I'll build your website. Now it's like a whole strategic approach to understanding your audience and how much, and the budget obviously is kind of an interesting concept, especially for smaller companies. So it's definitely a big challenge, what we're facing right now. There is a lot of fragmentation, I think, in general. So from a design point of view, the only way to stay mentally healthy is probably to think more in terms of the experience and disregard initially, when you're envisioning the project, disregard the screen sizes and the platforms and even the technology. Just let's think of the user. We know there are some obvious form factors. Maybe the phone allows for maximum mobility. Maybe the desktop allows for maximum performance. Maybe the TV allows for maximum, widescreen or view angle of experiences. So we know there are some screens that will give you something different. But if you think in terms of the experience of the user, then you're automatically, removing constraints from thinking kind of in a smaller scale, like apps. And we can talk more about this, but I think that's kind of a big thing right now. It's better to think in terms of the experience and tell the story of how a user will, how we're enhancing the user's sailing experience or running experience or phone calling experience or remote meeting like the one we're having right now experience. And then we'll figure out how we manifest that in different streams.
So could you give me some don'ts? And in with that, I know that on our discussion offline and when we met also at M-Days, you had some very interesting ideas of what you would make required reading for developers as well. So I'd like to hear that again.
Oh, yeah, we talked about that. And Rob, also to your point, I think it's, so the concept we're talking about is responsive web design. And so from a UI and design point of view, one of the things that I think we've all seen is this very popular word that has become, responsive web design, which I don't know why. I am from Mexico, so I don't know if there's I speak Spanish. I don't know if there's any language thing, but when I read the word for the first time, it sounded to me like responsible web design. And then that led me to think that really the word responsive, I think it's just a fashion right now. It's something that will fade out. I think the word has taken a lot of meaning because the design community is pushing strongly to help the world realize that it is important to have websites manifest themselves really well on different form factors and streams. However, if you think about it, that should be obvious, right? We shouldn't have to call websites, oh, that's a responsive website and this one is not. In the near future, I'm hoping and I'm expecting that word will simply dissolve and websites that adapt everywhere will simply be de facto, a standard. There's no other way to think about it, right? I still go to some websites now and then with my phone and I can really see them. So, that's just the way it's going to happen. So the other point about that is that for the last few years, the web design community in particular, because I guess today we could argue that there's a mobile design community, there's a web design community, there are people who do both things, but these different worlds are different enough that I am noticing some specialization. So, but the web design world, web designers have been investing a lot of time learning and exploring and discovering responsive web design patterns. thinking in terms of percentages, not pixels. Thinking in terms of layout. Are you portrait? Are you landscape? And how your website will manifest there. And there's a range of different publications and sessions around about responsive web design. So the thing we're talking about the other day is that, well, in the application world, on native applications, there's so many form factors, right? From the small phones to the 7-inch tablet and beyond and TV, that the only way to address these different scenarios as a designer is to start implementing some of these responsive web design best practices. Start thinking in terms of layout and being fluid, and thinking in terms of percentages instead of hardcore pixels. And I think for designers, it's going to be also a better approach to think like that. Because otherwise, aside from engineering, which has to code for different browsers and different platforms, well, designers, we're the same. We have, 10 different screen sizes that we have to target. Some of them vary just by a little bit, but that little bit could be very disruptive to our design. So one of the things that I think will become trendier until hopefully, again, it fades out is incorporating a lot of these responsive web design practices into application development. And I think right now the mobile design community has a lot to learn from the web design community, who has probably led the way here. Obviously, the web has been around for a while, and that was probably one of the first ways that people started consuming content on mobile devices anyway. So yeah, responsive web design is probably the way of the near future in application design and development, in my opinion. Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to follow up with that, Arturo, because one of the points is about developing the app, approaching the app, all sort of the tactical and technical points here. But at the end of the day, as a designer, you're actually more crafting here. You're crafting an experience, not just producing an app. What would you say then, with that in mind, are the steps to take?
Yeah, so that's very much related to these concepts that we've been discussing. It's always good to think in terms of the experience first and not of the app. The thing is, when you start thinking of the app, you immediately start taking the conversation in your own mind or mindset into thinking in terms of the constraints of a particular platform, or the properties, and cool things about a particular platform, about the user interface layout, how you're going to solve some aspects on the back end. So you start thinking about implementation, which is fine. I mean, we all have to get there at some point. But yeah, when you come up with an idea, it's always better, I believe, to think in terms of user experience and not necessarily in terms of the application itself. You're just thinking broader. And Rob mentioned a really good example in terms of Instagram, who focused a little bit more on a very specific set of people, and that were interested in photography, which ended up being a huge number of people by the time that they started growing. But even in that case, the thing that I know they had in their minds before they started the project wasn't just the app. It was the experience of allowing people to capture photos and capture those special moments. And then we all know that sometimes we take photos with our phones and maybe they don't necessarily look amazing. And so people were like, well, let's add filters, and that's going to make my memory and the experience of sharing these much better. So whether you have a narrow, kind of market, or very specific thing, very vertical or very horizontal, I think it applies the same way. You think in terms of how you're contributing to make your user's experience better in whatever they do. In this case, it was taking photos, it could be Skype, right, making phone calls. And now, I think we are all in 3 different countries, and we're having this video conference. And so again, Skype didn't necessarily think of first of how, they were going to build it. They were like, how do we enable people to be better? And then they figured out the technical details. So, it's not like we don't have to care, or we don't care about the technology anymore, because, we still have to build things, obviously. But I just think it's a little bit of a different mindset today. It's thinking about the user first, which again is almost something kind of obvious. But the tech industry has little by little been learning more about that. And I think it's just a normal kind of human learning process in any industry. If you think about cars, when cars were first released, back in the day, it was good enough for the cars to move. And take you from point A to point B without breaking apart, right? They were not necessarily the most comfortable, the most beautiful. They were just like these, coffee machines that were moving with wheels. And then little by little, the technology started getting better and better and more refined until the point that building a car that moved from point A to point B started being insufficient to make people happy and to, it stopped being just technology and the company started to think more about the experience of driving and what people do when driving. What do they do when they get into the car, when they're driving and talking to the person that's sitting next to them, or when they have children on the back seat, or hopefully not on the front seat, but that happened at the beginning. And so in the tech industry, it's been the same. We've been around. The PC has been around for 30 years. PC meaning, talking to consumers and putting a computer in every desk for every person. And we're learning little by little. And I think as a society and as an industry, we're learning about the technology and we're feeling more confident there. And now I think we have more time and we have a larger responsibility now to address social needs and expectations with technology rather than just, fancying some code and getting things going. Definitely a much larger responsibility now from the industry.
All right, I get the last question, Arturo, and this is a biggie.
Yes, Rob.
We as humans get into habits, right? And I think this is the biggest challenge that we have with new user experiences is that we get into habits, and we have a habit now of using these things as our phones, right? We have a habit of using our television as a television. You sit down and you watch TV. You get into your car and you're disconnected. You walk into your kitchen and there's nothing connected there. But this is changing. UI needs to be now seamless across all of these experiences, right? We get into the car, it's continuous. Conversation doesn't end when I get out of my car. It continues till I'm in my house, and then it transitions to the best appropriate technology. That seamless transition, that's the future of UI. Or is it? How important or how much of human challenge is this when we have to change to adopt and adapt these new UIs and UXs?
Well, that's a super interesting topic and really deep. There are a lot of people that have been publishing and doing a lot of conversation around the disappearance of technology, or the disappearance or dissolvement of design, of user interface design. And I think that, again, as part of this discovery or rediscovery that we've had as a society with 30 years of technology, we are realizing little by little that what matters is not the hardware that we're using right now, or the microphones or the devices that we use and we call smartphones. The most important thing is still us, right, and the people we care about. And so I think it's kind of the future, definitely, technology from my point of view is a complete rebirth or, rediscovery of humanity thanks to technology, instead of technology defining humanity, which is kind of the way it's been for the last few years, because, technology is exciting. We see this amazing piece of hardware or this amazing application or this piece of software, and we go like, wow, I can be better because, I have that. And I'm talking about from any vendor, Microsoft, Apple, Google, Sony, Samsung, anyone, it doesn't matter. But so technology kind of defines us, and I think the future is definitely more like we need to define the technology. And the way that happens is that technology starts blending with us and starts kind of fading out to the background. And in fact, the Metro design language, that's one of the things that we're looking for. And I think in some decades, I think Metro will be seen and recognized as one of those first UI paradigms and design paradigms that really looked into disappearing and going to the background, not making the buttons and the user interface the star of the show, but making the content and the information that is presented to our users the star of the show. The most important thing, the star of the show still being the user, but we don't have an intermediary called the user interface. We're just trying to bring the content information closer to the user. So I think we're going to see more of that with hardware, with software. There are a couple really amazing applications out there. One of them is from IA. It's called IA Writer. I believe it's available on the iPad right now. It's also available. I don't know if it's a website as well or an application for Mac. There's also Skype, and there are like some of these apps that are hyper minimalist. Another app that was really popular lately is called Paper, and these apps are all about being minimalist. You no longer have buttons or anything like that. It's just like super small. The scope of what you're doing is very small, and there's almost no user interface. So I think that is defining a huge trend in the industry. And again, in Microsoft, we super strongly believe that, and that's why Metro advocates hardcore, to making the user interface not the star of the show, and instead continue to make the user the star of the show.
I love it. I love it. You know what? I get the feeling, I don't know about you, Peggy, that we could be talking to Arturo about this for just about 24 hours, 36 hours. I mean, this is such a broad subject that we're going to have to get Arturo back on to talk a little bit more in depth about some of the things that we brought up here, because it just seems that each one of these things we've talked about is an entire show. But we're out of time. Arturo, thank you so much for being a part of this, for sharing some of your expertise, for enlightening us around the UI UX experience and how Microsoft really is changing their thinking, changing the focus from the technology to the user. I love this. I love the concept that you brought up here, responsive design. I love all of those things. Thank you so much for doing this. Really appreciate it.
No, thank you very much, Rob and Peggy, for the invitation. It was great talking to you, and I'm sure we'll get to talk much more in the future. Thank you very much.
We've been speaking with Arturo Toledo, who's a senior user experience designer in the Windows Phone Design Studio for Microsoft. If you're interested in finding a little bit more about Arturo, head to ux.artu, that's artu.tv, or twitter.com/ArturoT, ARTUROT. And we really appreciate you being here, Arturo. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. Talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Well, that was Arturo Toledo, who is the Senior User Experience Designer in the Windows Phone Design Studio for Microsoft. Hopefully you found a tremendous amount of value in what he brought. We'd love your feedback on what he said. Do you believe what he said? I believe wholeheartedly that UI and UX is the single most important thing that you can do when it comes to designing your mobile application. And a lot of successful apps, we talked about it in there, Instagram itself believes that as well. That was a great interview, wasn't it, Peggy?
Absolutely, because it gets down. I'm glad we kicked off our transition with that one, actually, because that's where it starts. Understanding the user, people, not technology, that's a no-brainer, but really thinking about the user experience, the UI, the UX from the ground up and working that into the development process. Great roadmap from Arturo.
It was. All right, well, we'll finish off there. We'd love your feedback, so please bring that feedback to us, untether@gmail.com, or you can reach out to Peggy at mobilegroove.com. All right, why don't we finish this off? The way that we typically would finish this off, we're going to highlight an app, and this is going to continue because we believe that we want to highlight some of these unsung heroes, the folks that are building the applications that we are going to be using or that are doing some social good. Peggy, you've got one that's doing some social good. What is this app? I got a video to play, and then we'll come back to it. What is this app?
Okay, well, first of all, I have to say it's not a new one, but I found it because I was following some Twitter streams, and the people were mentioning the app because they were using it in a community to stay connected. And so what the app is it's a mobile application for engagement and community to fight against slavery, against violence, against oppression. It's the International Justice Mission's mobile app to connect, to keep up to date, to share experiences, to network. It's more than an app. I think it's really more of a community, even beyond that, a call to action in there, everything. That's why I love it, because it's a mobile app that is not just doing one thing like a one-trick pony. It's doing a lot of things. So I have to raise my goblet to it, and when you play the video, it'll be obvious.
All right, here we go.
On my mind, silence will making it through, whether or not it's gonna stop soon. Let's piece it together. We'll keep it together. We're making it through, whether or not it's gonna stop soon.
Why don't you explain what that is, what IJM is?
Well, as I said, it's International Justice Mission, so it's IJM's free mobile app. And in addition to being a way to join the global fight against slavery, violence, oppression, it's a way to connect, to communicate around that. It's available on all platforms, but even more importantly, I think it's an excellent example of an app that can be, you say to yourself, what's mobile good for? Well, mobile is also good for social good. And I think this is an excellent example, and I'm hoping that it also sets an example for other developers, showing, what can an app be? It can be many things, but it can also go in this direction, not just the direction of entertainment. It can be communication, and it can be value on top of that for us all. So I won't get on my soapbox here, but again, I have to do it. It's a great app. IGM Mobile, awesome. Brushfire, who did it? Awesome.
We'll raise the goblet of rock to IJM.
Yes, absolutely.
So as Peggy,
we need more of them.
Absolutely. As Peggy said, you can find that anywhere in the App Store or in all the platforms, or you can just go to, what's the URL? IJM.org. IJM.org. Go check them out. So that's it. We thank Arturo for being a part of our first rebrand or rethink of the show. This has been episode number 12. We will be back with a developer focus again for episode number 13. Got a great lineup coming over the next number of months, and we expect you guys to provide some feedback to us. Please bring it. Reach out at untethered@gmail.com. Find us on Twitter. Reach out to Peggy at mobilegroove.com. Give us some feedback. We'd love to hear it. We'd love to see if you like the show, the new direction. Bring it. Who would you like to see on the show? Please, please, please. And if you have an app that you think should be featured here, we'd love to hear that as well. Thank you guys for watching. Peggy, until next week for episode number 13, Lucky 13.
Yes? Oh, Lucky 13,
Lucky
Rob.
13. And it actually...
There you go.
Lucky 13. We'll see what comes up there. Until next time, thank you all for watching or listening, wherever you are. Really appreciate you spending the time with M Pulse. See you next week. See you, Peggy.
See ya. Make apps, Rob.
Make apps.